A good reviewer reviews quickly. Hey, look, an episode of the show that I actually have a little bit more to talk about than usual, which is honestly exciting. Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to my review of Star Wars The Bad Batch, Episode 6, Decommissioned. And as I said, I actually have a little bit to say about this episode, which is exciting. It's been a little hard to talk about each episode these past few weeks, because there hasn't been a lot for me to dive into all that much. But finally here we have actually a little bit of nudging the story along, a little bit more answers, and a little bit more of some intrigue and some plot stuff going on, as well as some returning of some very frustrating characters to the Star Wars mythos. So let's get all into it. Into it? You know what I mean. I loved the opening of this episode with Omega being taught how to use her like bow and arrow thing. I think the thing is insanely cool, and I was actually a little bit upset. I might have missed if she got it back by the end of the episode. I hope she does, because I love that little arrow thing that Omega has. It's such a cool weapon and cool idea, and would be such a unique thing for her to use. And I could see her being such a badass with it. Later on in the series, or maybe she pops up in like future Star Wars shows, things like that. It would be so cool to see her develop with that weapon, because I really loved it. But this opening scene was really nice, sort of her learning how to use the weapon, and I believe it was Echo was teaching her how to use it, which was actually a very sweet scene. And the bar patrons were a lot of fun betting on her, and I love that sort of became part of the lesson. So you need to learn how to deal with distractions. I love how this as weird as it kind of feels to have like a little kid learning the ways of like a soldier, I think it works within this show, because that's the mindset that these clones have. They're not really meant to be parental figures, and so they would be teaching her how to be a soldier, and she kind of wants that as well. That's all she really knows as well. And so I genuinely enjoyed that dynamic. It's such an interesting one to have a child character in, and one that does not fully sit comfortably, but in an interesting way for me. I'm not entirely sure I'm comfortable with like a kid being taught to be a soldier, and yet there's like a weird earnestness to it, and I'm sort of curious to see how the show is going to continue to balance that going forward, because the show kind of has a whimsy to it that doesn't necessarily fit the show, and so tonally it's a bit strange. But I'm me, I always kind of like a little bit of strange, and so I don't have a egregious problem with it. It's one of those, like, I'm interested to see how they develop that going forward with Omega's character and her relationship to the Bad Batch. But then Sid sends the group on a mission to go get a tactical droid. I love this idea of the thing that they need the tactical droid for is that it is something that can be taught to beat clones better and better, and so all that information on that tactical droid's head of how to beat clones is very, very useful in the Empire right now, because the clones are all the Empire's using at the moment. And that also might explain why later on the clones get dropped, because their tactics are sort of easily understandable and read, and they use the same sort of mindset every single time. And so adding different soldiers adds a little bit of diversity of tactics, which is actually kind of against fascist thought, which is an interesting sort of juxtaposition in an interesting way. And I like that sort of subtle building of that payoff here. I also like that they use the Millennium Falcon trick of like sticking on the bottom of a ship to get not seen by like sensors and stuff like that. Very Empire Strikes Back Millennium Falcon. That was kind of fun. Then they go and sneak into what is essentially Attack of the Clones type factory, the one that like Obi-Wan, it might even be the same one, but I might be wrong on that. It is Corellia. I don't remember if Corellia was the planet that Obi-Wan snuck onto in Attack of the Clones, but it was a very similar looking factory. Also, there was some like 80s synthwave Blade Runner-y type music going on for a second there that I really kind of enjoyed. Anywho, I also loved Wrecker's fear of heights coming back. It was referenced way back when their first appearance in Clone Wars, and so Wrecker having a fear of heights, it was a nice little reminder of his character trope, especially for those who hadn't seen the Clone Wars and may not have gotten that introduction to that element of his character yet. And again, just proves that Wrecker is the most human character on the show for me. Sid and Wrecker are sort of in my top favorites of this show so far. Then we have them going after the tactical droid, and then we have an interesting complication, because Trace and Rafa come into this episode to try and add a complication. They are also after the tactical droid. Trace and Rafa, for those of you who don't remember, are the two characters that sort of appeared in the final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars about a year or so back, in this what many people consider to be some of the worst episodes of the Clone Wars, especially of that season. And they were the people who were friends with Ahsoka and sort of got caught up in the weird mix-up-y thing. They were really kind of bland and blah characters. I didn't find them all that interesting. It felt insanely pointless as characters. And honestly, they're a little bit better here, a little bit better utilized here, but I still found them to be kind of bleh and I don't really care, which is sad because their haircuts and their looks are very much like speak to me as like, oh, these are characters I would enjoy, but I found them kind of They don't really have anything distinctive personality-wise. They're just kind of blah and there. The jokes that they've had at one point, like one of them said, I forget who said what, but they're like, we need a distraction. The other person said, we need a distraction. Oh, is there an echo in here? Oh, look, and it was such bad humor. It was very bad humor, very forced humor, and I was not here for it. I found it so dull. And maybe it's just bringing my preconceptions of these characters from the Clone Wars. I mean, heavens knows Star Wars has done good things with terrible stories and characters before. Just look at pretty much all of the prequels and how well the Clone Wars has utilized them and so many other things. Star Wars is very good about, taking something bad and making it better, especially in animated form. But just in this episode, they didn't do a lot to change my mind on these characters, I guess is the way I'll put it. Like, they weren't annoyingly bad, but I was just sort of like, all right, fine. I guess they're back. Not really excited to see them here again, but I guess there you go. But during also the battle, Wrecker has to go up and like jump across a chasm and everything again, bringing back his fear of heights again, which was nice. But then he falls on the ground and we start to see finally the payoff that we're getting, that Wrecker's chip is being activated. And so now we have this ticking bomb. There's been reference to it in pretty much every episode before, but we see here he's very much about to be affected by this. And so, obviously it's going to happen at one of the worst possible moments in the next few episodes. So I'm very excited to see when that will go off, and I'm sure it will break my heart. And I just want nothing to happen to my big wrecking baby. So yeah, I like that confirmation of sort of the thing that we've been going on here. So now it's just like there's some dramatic tension here. It's like, when is it going to go off? It's not, it's like, it's the, Alfred Hitchcock thing. There's a bomb under the table. Audience knows it. When is it going to go off? The characters don't know. So that's going to be a lot of fun to sort of see where that's going. And I like that setup here. Then we get the team succeeding and going out, and I like that Hunter gives the Trace and Rafa the tactical droid information, because Hunter is starting to realize, like, you're right. We don't necessarily know who we're taking this to. And this is a world that's become much more morally, gray than the sort of what we saw as soldiers. And so I like the sort of complicating of this era of the Empire, of these, the soldiers come from a very black and white world, and now they're in a world that's not so clear to them, which is kind of funny considering that many thought that the Empire section of Star Wars mythology was the more clear black and white moment of the series. You have the Rebels versus the Empire. That was very clear, stark contrast. And I like that we're actually seeing there is a bit more morality and moral grayness to this era. I mean, obviously Empire bad, but there's still some interesting choices and morally gray choices to be made here. And I like Hunter trying to do his best to try and learn what morality is in this new era for him. And so I think that was such a cool sort of morally graying of this for them. And then we get the final little tease here with Trace and Rafa clearly calling out to somebody and saying, I have information on these clones. So this is an interesting question. Who is that? Is this the same person that was hired Ming-Na Wen's character from a few episodes ago? Is this someone completely new? If it's someone completely new, that means there's a fourth major player going on here. There's the Empire, there's Kaminoans, there's whoever hired Ming-Na Wen, and then there's this person that Trace and Rafa are talking to. The easy answer would be that it would be Ahsoka, considering that they already have a pre-established relationship with Ahsoka. But that, again, it would be the easy answer. You have Obi-Wan is still around during this time. I doubt it's Yoda. I'm trying to think of like anyone else. Maybe Bail Organa, possibly. There's several other people. Princess Leia would be too young at this point. So yeah, just several different possible players on the board that could be behind this sort of interesting call. But it'd be interesting if there's yet another mysterious player in the background. I'd be curious to see how that goes. And so that's all my final thoughts. Overall, I think a really good episode for the majority, but Trace and Rafa are kind of like, don't really care too much about them. I could take or leave them at this point. More likely leave them. We'll see if they come back. Maybe they were just a one-off. But if they do come back, I really hope that they justify them a little bit more than they do here. But overall, the rest of this episode sets some good dramatic tension going forward and gives us some more interesting questions and actually has like a decent, interesting morality tale going on within the rest of the episode and some good moments for Omega as well. So genuinely a good episode with a couple flaws here and there. One other thing that I will say going forward is this is probably going to be my last week-to-week review of Bad Batch, because next week Loki is starting. And since these reviews have not done super well, and I haven't had much to talk about up until this episode, really, I feel like it's going to be easier for me to do this, no pun intended, in a batch review form. So I'm going to be doing week-to-week reviews of Loki on, I believe, Tuesdays is when that's going to be coming out. So look for those. And then I'll be talking about Bad Batch in like batches of 2 or maybe 3 episodes, or whenever I feel like there's something big to talk about. Like maybe next week's episode, we'll have a big reveal that I want to like suddenly dive into. But for right now, I feel like I'm just going to do some batch reviews of this show because, I want to have more to talk about than I have historically in this show so far. And also doing multiple week-to-week reviews is a bit tiring for me, considering that they're always releasing at midnight, and I want to get some sleep. So, that's sort of going to be the goal going forward with the Bad Batch review. So if you're interested in Loki, be looking for my reviews of Loki starting next week, and I will still be doing Bad Batch reviews, just less week to week, more than likely, unless something crazy happens and the show suddenly gets wildly insane. I'm like, I have to talk about this. But beyond that, I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. What did you think of this episode? I'd love to hear all of that. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more discussions like this and reviews and my Loki reviews and other things as well on this channel. And don't forget to live long and stay sexy.